I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here inside the Hub Culture Pavilion. It's Davos 2019, and I am back with some repeat guests. Thanks, guys, for coming along.
Always a pleasure, Edie.
So James Hewitt, Chief Innovation Officer at Hintsa Performance. Olivier Oullier, you're the President at EMOTIV. Now tell me, you guys are down in the studio just underneath our feet with FIA, one of Hub Culture's partners. Delighted to have them here. Why are you here? What are you doing?
It's the second year we're partnering at Davos with the International Federation of Automobile, one of the most powerful organizations in the world. And we're working on better understanding what is distracting people when they're driving. Fatigue, stress. So we put together Hintsa Performance, EMOTIV, and the FIA, a little experiment that all people at Davos can come and have fun with, where we compare their performances to some of the best drivers in the world, the world champions.
Some of the Formula One drivers.
Absolutely.
And what are you doing? What are you adding to that, James?
So I'm going to be administering some of these tests. So we've got some really interesting data from drivers, which we can compare with the participants here, anyone who wants to take part. And we've got a system that's actually going to measure some very fundamental cognitive capabilities. And one of the reasons we're interested in that is that these cognitive capabilities apply to all humans, equally to the person in Davos who's here at the conference, to a Formula One driver who's driving a circuit. And we're very interested in how stress and fatigue impact these cognitive capabilities. Because on the road, you'll see this manifest itself with an increased risk of accidents, for example, if you're tired, likely driven by those cognitive capabilities being impaired. But also there's some crossover to the business world as well.
And tell me about that. How does that work? What do you find? Because I know you're holding the toy, the brain scanner, which I love. I'm not wearing it this time, but tell me what are some of the things that you notice? What are some of the things that you've tested downstairs that you can share?
What is really interesting is to measure the difference between what people perceive, you know, how fatigued they are, how tired, how stressed, and what we measure. And a lot of organizations today, and not just the people who are driving, who generally think they're okay to drive even when they're very tired. A lot of organizations are more and more concerned about the stress of their employees, yet they don't have very scientific measures in order to change the way they train people or the way they organize their workday. What we're bringing here is to really be able to measure how you react to events, how you make decisions, whether you pay attention, how distracted you are. And from this data, the cognitive tests that we developed with Hintsa Performance and also the brain measurement that, again, we worked on to be able really to know what makes every individual special and for further developing strategies to help them.
So tell me about some of the things that you see in terms of cognitive performance and what happens. So if I'm tired, and I'm at work, what are some of the mistakes I'm more likely to make, and how aware of them am I?
Well, it begins actually when you drive to work, because if you drive while you're sleeping, you're 33% more likely to have an accident. So it begins even before you've got into the office. That's the context you're working in. But actually what we see in a workplace context is that a particular aspect of cognitive performance related to impulse control is significantly impaired by inadequate sleep. So we see that sleep duration, the amount of time you sleep, actually accounts for about 57% of the variance that we see in impulse control.
And give me some examples of impulse control or lack thereof.
If your impulse control is impaired, then it means that you might be more likely to rely on a stereotype or a heuristic, for example, rather than stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. You might be more likely to look for the easy solution rather than go for the more complex problem that maybe some other people might not see. And actually for many high performance knowledge workers, many of the people who are here in Davos this week, actually these are the differentiators that really set them apart in their work. And this cognitive capability is really a superpower, which is being impaired simply by maybe being too stressed and not sleeping enough.
What would you add, Olivier?
No, it's incredible the number of decisions that are made by top executives that are tired, that are distracted. And some of these decisions, you know, can range from hiring someone to somewhat putting the future of a company at stake. And it's key to be aware of what is going to influence the decision-making process, how it is going to influence it. As James mentioned, biases, you know, people are more prone to relying on biases if they are tired. And finally, what kind of solutions we can bring in order to help them. And I think this is really important this week at Davos, this year, with all the questions around the future of work. The future of work, a lot of people are focusing on AI replacing people. But think about the existing workforce that needs to be reskilled. Better understanding how people function will allow to retrain them for some tasks that AI or robots are going to take over in order to know people better and to be at the core, thanks to behavioral and brain sciences, of what makes us who we are, our bodies, our minds, our brain, in the environment of work.
One problem that I have is when we talk about this idea of the human-machine interlink, it actually complements something that you guys are bringing, which is the fact that part of this distraction that we all suffer from, and part of the sleeplessness that we have, is because we all have these screens that we don't have necessarily a very healthy relationship with. You've got yours over there taking pictures of us while we're on here. We can sit in bed and watch Netflix for too long. We can get distracted by going to Facebook when in fact we went there just to order something on from the supermarket. That's got to be part of one of the things that you guys look at as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. From a brain perspective, just watching a screen before going to bed is preventing to release some hormones that allow you to sleep. It's as simple as that. And then there is all the consequences from the lack of sleep. But without even thinking about the time you spend on your phone, being distracted, while driving otherwise, just the fact that you're looking at your phone at a key moment, which is where you should relax, be in the darkness before going to bed in order to sleep well, just this first disruption can have massive consequences, James.
Yeah, and I think, again, it begins in the day. I mean, there's some quite interesting research that suggests that if your phone is visible while you're in a meeting, for example, actually your fluid intelligence in particular, which is associated with your problem-solving capacity, is impaired. Simply by the fact that we're aware that that phone is there just waiting to give us some juicy novelty. And so actually we need to start to modify our environment, I think, to address some of these things. I think it begins with the day, perhaps in an important meeting, put your phone out of sight. As Olivier mentioned, before we go to sleep, maybe leave the phone in another room. So one of the challenges that we have is when we're fatigued, as I mentioned, impulse control is impaired and we can get caught in these vicious cycles. So for example, you try to go to sleep, instead of going to sleep, maybe you look at something on Netflix for a while. But when that next episode starts to queue up,
it's so hard.
You can't resist.
So hard.
The impulse control is impaired, so another 45 minutes of sleep is gone.
Right.
Then the next day, you're more likely to do the same thing again because your impulse control is impaired even further. So somehow we need to break this cycle, and I think that can begin by raising awareness, using technologies like we are with EMOTIV to actually measure what's going on, and then try and move from that measurement to some kind of intervention to actually address this.
So let's talk now about the interventions, about concrete actions. We mentioned putting the phone away. It's really hard. What else? And obviously, if we're talking about it from a corporate perspective, the leadership has to come from the top. So give me some examples of what you think people can do.
Not just from the top. I mean, from experience with our clients, we see that a lot of solutions come from people at every level because they got the experience and the fact that distraction, fatigue, and a task that can take a lot of your bandwidth varies depending on your job. And the key for us is first to customize, to personalize the intervention and to be able to scale it. And this is what we bring, is this idea that it's no longer a one-on-one intervention when you record someone's brain. We have the capacity now to record hundreds and thousands of brains at the same time, thanks to cloud computing, computational and translational algorithms that compute in real time measures of attention and distraction, for example. And this is why at the organizational level, we can get solutions that come from hundreds of knowledge workers. The bandwidth that people can allocate to a task is something that is crucial. As James mentioned, if you don't sleep enough, you're more distracted or easily distracted. It requires more effort in order to achieve a task that generally is not going to be done as well as if you were relaxed, which, I mean, is obvious when you talk about it.
Yep.
But the fact that your manager comes and checks on you every hour is a second task. It's a secondary task because you anticipate the manager to come. So you start to stress. And we see that a lot. So the changes come at the individual level, but also a lot of fundamental findings are applied at the managing level.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it is a combination of top down and bottom up. And so I do think leaders play a key role in role modelling and actually providing permission for people to be able to single task, for example, for a period of time. But I think at the same time we need to accept that the implementation of this is likely to be in seasons. And there's going to be some seasons where, like this week, for example, we probably will be multitasking, pulling our phone out at every opportunity, not sleeping enough. That's inevitable, that's fine. But what are you going to do after this week to actually recover and recharge? And I think one of the challenges is we've fallen into this trap of living in this always on way, and we think there's no way out. When actually maybe we need to accept that sometimes we are always going to be on, but actually rediscover a seasonality and more human rhythms of work and rest. Because I think that the biggest risk isn't that these machines are going to keep working like us humans, it's that we humans keep trying to work increasingly like machines, always being on.
And something we learned from the high performers, from Formula One champions and other kinds of champions, is all of them know when to take a break.
Right.
How important it is just to switch off, which most of the people we work with in organizations are not doing because they are guilted or they have self-guilting, when it comes to, I need to work, I need to spend 4 hours in front of my computer. We saw some people that after 45 minutes can no longer concentrate. It's not a problem if you allow them to go for a walk for 10 minutes, take a small break, come back and being efficient and well again. And think of it at a larger scale when it comes to managing a season for champions or a full year of work. Whomever you are, you need to switch off, not just from the devices, but from work and sometimes from your family.
Thank you guys very much for stopping into the studio. Once again, Olivier, James, thank you very much. And thanks for partnering with us downstairs at FIA. And I'm Edie Lush.